Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Diversion Podcast, brought to you by Diversion. We make scalable, modern version control for game development in all of your creative endeavors. My name is Omer, I'm the community manager for Diversion, and today I'll be interviewing Aarimous, who's one of the developers behind the successful hit indie game, a game about feeding a black hole. We'll have links for everything, and let's jump right into the interview. Welcome in, Aarimous. Very nice to finally get to meet you. Can you please introduce yourself for our listeners and tell us about your top three games of all time?
Ooh, yeah, my name's Aarimous. I am a full-time game developer, YouTube content creator, occasional Twitch streamer, and I also am a gamer. I it's something I realized in the last year that I just think and do gaming all the time, like whether it's playing D&D with my friends or going to like game dev meetups or doing game dev as my full-time thing. It's like I'm usually like thinking about games. My top three games of all time. I'm gonna have to go in no particular order. Slay the Spire, Civilization 6, and Factorio with like Path of Exile somewhere in like an honorable mentions area there.
That's a pretty varied array, going through all corners of the
Uh,
gaming spectrum. That's interesting. So is it your love of gaming that led you to become a game dev? Is that where it came from?
Absolutely. I think some of my first few memories as a kid were literally playing like Mario 64 on I remember sitting so close to the screen because I have bad eyesight, and so I don't think at the time I had glasses. I just remember being so close to it's specifically the like water level where you're like swimming down and having to hold your breath and stuff. But for as long as I know, gaming in any regard has been a part of my life, whether that's playing video games, board games, or I don't know, making up games for, imagination time as a kid and stuff like that. So it's been part of my life for a long time. And I think a lot of people like myself get into programming and stuff with kind of that idea of maybe I can make a game. But in college, I started studying computer science and mathematics, and um, just somewhere along the line of getting busy, kind of went out and found a full-time job and stuff to pay off student loans and stuff, and just kind of forgot about game development. And then in 2020, when the pandemic started, I had a lot of free time on my hands and was like, hey, what if I use some of my skills to finally make a game here? And ever since, it's kind of just been something that I've been doing as a hobby. And then recently, I guess in the last 2 years, have turned it into a full-time endeavor now.
What was that point that you made the switch from, like, was it some super successful project? Was it like an aha moment where you're just fed up with your day job?
I think it's a little bit of like fed up with day job, and something I've realized in my adulthood is that I want to do have a lot of different experiences. And so I had done Salesforce, like corporate IT development for about 5 or 6 years at that point. Was at one big Fortune 500 company for a majority of that time. Started getting kind of bored and decided to look for a different company. Went there and worked there for a while, and uh, got paid a lot of money to do it, which was awesome. But it was a really toxic culture, and I found myself disinterested in some of the problems because I already learned how to solve them before. And so I found myself kind of just like, I don't really want to keep doing this. I'm bored at this. And at the same time, I was like in my free time doing game development, which has so many different disciplines and challenging things to solve. And like, I've already been doing it for at right now, I've been doing it for 6,000 hours or something. And I feel like I'm still finding new problems to solve. So back then, I was like this contrast between a day job that I hated, that I dreaded going to, and this like free time activity of game development was such a huge contrast that I eventually quit that job. Basically, like it was like in January of 2022, I think, because I was like, this is not a good work environment for me. I hadn't taken any like major time off of working, and so I was like, let me take a couple months sabbatical and do more game development. And then during that time, I ended up doing it for 9 months because I had some savings saved up and made my first game, Chess Survivors, which Didn't do well enough for me to keep being full time, but was certainly like still something I'm proud of. And then I went and got a job at a company that did treat me right and did have good company culture. Worked there for about 15 or 16 months, and then still had that urge and that entrepreneurial desire to like go and make games as a full-time endeavor, and have been doing that now for just shy of 2 years.
That's one heck of a journey. And well, at some point along those 2 years from, well, we went through Hexagod in the middle there, but at some point
Yeah.
when there was, I guess, some sort of transition from chess survivors, which
Hmm.
also kind of like your favorite games, right? Your the commercial projects, the commercial titles that you release are also very different from one another,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the right from survivors to roguelike the city builder, village builder, and
Hmm.
to just idle.
Yeah.
What would you say is like a crimson thread that connects all of them despite being so different?
Um, hmm. The thread is me. Yeah, so
Well, I sure
it is
hope so.
interesting. Yeah, it is me, but it's from my perspective, I can see the game development lessons I learned and even some of the strategies I took from prototypes that never saw the light of day into chess survivors, into Hexagod, into a game about feeding a black hole. I can see, from my perspective, I can see those things and like me developing my style. Um, but I'm not sure there's a huge reflective like this is how this is like this game or that game, and I don't know if there's a specific thread between all of it other than it kind of matches what I want to do with my career, which is a bunch of different stuff. I'm interested in exploring different genres and things like that, um, and growing and learning as a developer. So maybe that's the common thread is just trying out different genres and trying to figure out how do I like to make games and how can I make games. First as a solo developer and now working with Thornity, who is my co-developer on a game about feeding a black hole.
Yeah, and so, well, in your most recent video at the time of your YouTube videos at the time of this recording, you said that you were actually considering maybe another incremental idle style game. So, we staying on, like, did you find a niche, or are you, or will you, did you plan on keeping expanding your repertoire of genres in the future?
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing that happened with Hexagod, and that's it took a lot of time to make, which is a lot of learning, a lot of growth, and then the financial like payoff of that was not what it needed to be to continually be a business. There's a great tension between being a business and a game developer, and that tension is at some point you have to make some sort of reasonable living wage with how much money you're making from your products. Um, a game about feeding a black hole came kind of birthed out of the idea that Hexagod wasn't, it took me over 1,000 hours to make and has only sold about $10,000, which the math isn't great there. That's not a lot of money per hour spent. And a game about feeding a black hole was like, can I make a game that's quick and tight and easy so that if I spend less time, it needs to make less money to basically show a return on that time investment. Um, it did way better than we were expecting. Like multiple factors of orders of magnitude better than we were expecting. But we had talked in September about doing another incremental game, basically taking what we learned from making a game about feeding a black hole and doing it again, but faster. Um, we're in the process of figuring out is trying to hit the February Next Fest, which it's January 12th right now. We would reasonably need to release the demo in a month to hit the February Next Fest, which starts in it's like February 23rd or something. We could probably do that, but it's also emotionally challenging to have a game blow up like a game about feeding a black hole. And we're like figuring out is it worth actually pushing really hard to do this, or should we be investing more time in a game about feeding a black hole and then slowly make this new incremental game and just Hexagon's still in early access, and I kind of want to do that. I want to do a little bit more dev on that game because although it didn't do well, of the three games I've made, it's probably my favorite game because I like strategy games and it's a little bit more strategy roguelike than these other two ones. So your question was, making another incremental game, why? There's a good like there's a it's a hot market right now for incremental games, and we have a lot of experience doing it. And if I'm thinking like a business person, which is a hat I have to put on, it makes sense to try to do it again more efficiently. And I also still enjoy making incremental games, and I think I could have some fun doing a slightly different variation of one.
That I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, seeing well, if you're planning on hitting the next fest, which like you said would be like almost a month away, that I imagine that would require some maybe some changes to the way in which you were to your process.
Hmm.
Is that like something you consider like super agile, move super quickly from a project management perspective? Is that something, well, that you considered it at all? And how has that changed? Well, because I assume coming from a software, I also come from a software background, so I imagine that's
Yeah.
something that you're familiar with, like especially working in teams and now transitioning to solo and now transitioning again to like a pair, a small team.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, how has your process and your views on process changed throughout all this time?
I would say what I'm if I was like writing down a methodology, I would say we're doing like a purely agile methodology, being that we're going to work on the most important thing. And then as soon as that changes, we're going to pivot immediately. I have worked in a few different shops that do Scrum as their methodology of trying to implement some agile practices and stuff. And like, I I think I think Scrum's kind of a cancer that has infested businesses. Like at its core, it's like let's work on the most important thing for the company, right? And I just think that oftentimes that doesn't actually play out during a 2 week cycle of like, oh, a new business thing has popped up. Let's take away all these other priorities, and this is the new biggest priority, and we can like reshuffle and stuff. So I simply at this point take like a to-do list of my next like 3 things that I want to get done, work on that, and basically am daily like asking myself, is this the most important couple things for me to be doing with my time, knowing that my time is limited and I want to get the value out of that. So looking at trying to make a game really quickly, the big thing we focused on and like in retrospect with the game about feeding a black hole was like, what are the decisions that we are going to be making now that can't be undone in the future? So like the core mechanic is a great example. This like hovering over things to click it. Everything else in the game is built on that. If that changes, all of a sudden, if we've done 200 more hours of work based off of it being this hovering mechanic, that 200 hours gets invalidated. So right now with it's a mining incremental game, we're thinking what are the things that we need to do to make this like what are the building blocks? And so that's simply going to be like the mining mechanic and the player movement mechanic. And we're trying to get those things done so that they feel really good. And then we can start building on top of that again and again and again. So from a corporate standpoint, it's the same sort of thing. It's like, what are the big things that we need to do as a company so we can start building on top of this stuff? But I feel like all my experiences with corporations and like bigger businesses is it feels like the car is driving down the road and being built at the same time. And that's kind of by the nature of these companies trying to scale and get funding and like acquire customers. You got these big fish customers who want you to build feature X, and so then you pivot and say, well, if they leave us, the whole company goes under. And so there's a reason why cars are driving down the road and being like the tires are being put on and the doors and the windows and like, but it creates these really weird incentivization problems where with a small two-person team in a game, we can take a step back and say, well, we don't have any customers. What is from our vision, what we're making, what is the most important couple things to get done at this point? Does that make any
Yeah,
sense?
it makes perfect sense. I'm a big advocate for I'm gonna say agile development, but not what many people mean when they say agile, but what is really behind agile
Yeah.
thinking, which is what you said. By the way, big shout out to Dave Farley, the Modern Software Engineering channel.
Ooh.
I hope he notices me. I'm a big fan. Um, but yeah, so following on the process question, and agile, which comes with a lot of its own challenges. Now here comes the next big question, the core question of the interviews. I'm gonna ask like a a prefix question, and
Sure,
then we'll go to the big one. So,
sure.
which version controller are you using, and why is Diversion the best one? And that leads me to the next question of how does version control fit into your process? How do you use it?
Uh, Notoriously in the long run, I have um been a solo developer, and so version control was simply disaster recovery for me. It wasn't until Hexagod where I would throw away a lot of work that I would need to look back at older commits and stuff and actually do a little bit of branching to be able to like test out and like maneuver my code around to be like, oh well, I spent all this time putting stuff in, and turns out that's not actually fun. Let me roll back. So I use GitHub as my repository right now, and I use a GitHub desktop situation. I have no reason not to check out Diversion. And it's just simply like at this point with Thornady working on the project, I have gotten better at it. I have like started to see the value in good commit messages, and like when I was at a full-time development stack, I would do good commit messages and pull requests and stuff like that. But now I'm working with somebody else. We have not a robust, but like basically a functional process of just pushing it up there, and then he'll pull stuff down for Godot and be able to run it and things like that.
And so actually, I couldn't find a lot of information about Thornity. Is he did the art? Am I
Thornady
correct?
is like business development, so a lot of the Steam release and marketing. And then he doesn't consider himself a game developer, but I absolutely do because he also spun up a tool to help us like build out the data structure for the tree, and then has like de facto then did a lot of the balancing of the tree because that's also where he found his strengths. And I was able to kind of like let him do the tree. He would like commit up a huge JSON file, and then I'd pull that down and be able to then have it run in the game. And so a really nice kind of I guess yeah, we just used it as like a place to put the project and pull it all down.
Which is one of the big, one of I would say the big three uses of version control, along with being the single source of truth and the source for all of your processes, and
Yeah.
just general, backup. Did you have any issues, any sort of like weird pitfalls with assets?
No, because we had just really simple like PNGs and stuff, and like even then it's such a small amount. Um, but the pitfalls are I'm a dumb monkey, and I just for whatever reason, Git in general has always just been like the bane of my existence. It's been like a through line of my development career. Is like I don't know why. I've learned it so many times. I've been using it for so many years, and I still go to set up a Git repo, and I'm just like, it makes me just feel like I'm like I have no idea what I'm doing, which is a humbling experience, right? Um, so I guess I have a question for you, because I was sponsored for Diversion a couple was that at this point it felt like a couple months
Couple
ago
of
or something
months
like
ago,
that,
sure,
right?
yeah.
Um, when does that like that was the big selling point was that like assets and like these more maybe more complicated assets like changes to those things Diversion was good at understanding and doing from kind of what I was learning about when I was setting up the sponsorship. When does that come to play for like a development studio? Like when do you see that kind of being a really big use case? Is that in 3D games? Like how does that work for like maybe 2D games and stuff? Like where do you see that being like good use cases?
So the thing that Diversion does well with assets is, well, first of all, it treats them just as it treats any other file. So you don't
Mhm.
need, for example, all of the extra setup for something like get LFS and enable get attributes and whatever. It gets really the effect gets very strong when the files are bigger. So of course,
Mm,
when you're doing 3D games and the whole management, you said GitHub, so all of the file size limits are essentially gone. So I don't remember off the top of my head the max file size for GitHub, but
it's not
for
a lot.
it's not a
It's
lot.
because I remember seeing the diversion when I'm like, oh my God, like, it was like 100 gigabytes. I'm like, that's crazy. And I think it's maybe like 1 or 2 gigabytes on GitHub, which for like 2D Godot projects, I'm still well under that. But that balloons a lot quicker with a 3D, even a
Yeah,
simple 3D project.
yeah, for sure. No, but that's the repo size that we give for free.
Yeah.
Our per file size limit is 5 TB, which if you do any kind of complex lighting and you bake your lighting, well, it doesn't reach 5 Ts usually, but it could be pretty big. So the way we manage the files themselves is
Yeah.
different.
Is 5 TB
And
for a file size essentially infinite at this point? Like kind of pretty future proofed?
I sure hope so. The feature request that prompted this, it used to be 5 GB
Yeah.
for us, and then there was some studio that had a plugin for water that they were using, and it was a zip file that weighed 10 GB, and
Oh,
they would
geez.
just have that in their repository. So we said, okay, well, 5 is no longer good enough. Okay, so we'll do 5 TB, and we never want to hear about this ever again. And then it answered. Then when all of the VFX people came in, they said, "Oh, I have this file. It's 80 GB." We said, okay, that's not impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like,
Um,
yeah, it's still small.
yeah, it's I don't even feel it. But
Yeah.
that's from the way we manage the files side. It also affects the process, especially if you have multiple people working on assets, then
Yeah.
you need a way to prevent people from stepping on each other's toes. And you could do that if you set up Git LFS, then you could do exclusive file. If I remember correctly, version 2 supports file locking, like exclusive checkouts. You also
Okay.
have that with for the Unity people, Unity version control, previously known
Hmm.
as Plastic, also has that in Perforce, which is the big currently the
For
big
now.
big AAA solution. They all have that, and we have that as well. You have a bit of a different take to it. We don't actually mess with your operating system. We just manage it inside the app. But
Sure.
then you know if you know who's working on what live, and it prevents you from essentially creating a binary merge conflict, which unless you have specialized software effectively for each file extension, you need a different
Yeah.
technological solution to merge it. So
Yeah.
it's effectively it just doesn't really exist. Um, then
I've never
you're
had that
not
sort of a
stuck.
problem, but my gut tells me the people who have are like, yes, it is a nightmare. And like that it just my developer brain's like, yeah, binary merge conflict, that sounds like a nightmare. And I'm sure some people are like, okay, this is something that is a problem and diversion could help with, which would be cool.
It sounds like a super cool technical problem to solve. It's like it's a nice engineering challenge, but we want to be game devs, right? We don't want to binary
Yeah.
merge files. We want-
Like we're just trying to make a fireball look really cool on the screen.
We're trying to feed black holes here. We're not trying
Yeah, we're
to
trying,
like
exactly,
merge.
exactly. Luckily though, like I'm such a small, it's just me and Thornity, and the games we make are small and simple, and so there are more like functional, just like being able to use it as disaster recovery, and even just like sharing the project file so he can pull down Godot. Because I also think Godot is like specifically like good with GitHub and like Git and stuff. So like, I haven't messed around at all with the diversion UI and stuff for that. Um, for more like functional use cases, how is this something you'd recommend I like check out more? Because like maybe I don't need to worry about the binary merge conflicts and stuff, but even just like day-to-day use case for us, do you think that I should check out diversion for like how I'm going to be using it?
Well, of course, I think you should check out Diversion. I mean, come on. Yeah,
This is not
of
sponsored. This is
course.
not sponsored. I was sponsored in the past, but I am actually curious because I have run into some GitHub UI issues. So I'm generally curious here.
So yeah, for sure. First of all, I think you definitely should, and it's free for indies and up to 5 users, and so you need to qualify for the indie tier, but it's really easy to pick it up and get started. The very big benefit I think you will see, or rather, let me tell you my personal experience with how I wound up at Diversion. I was also doing the solo, or still am doing the solo indie game dev, big adventure working in Unreal, and I was using Git because of my software background. And the first time I tried working with an animator friend of mine, I told her, "Yeah, come, let's just use Git. What's the big deal?" And it was a very big deal. And it was in a game jam, and in the confines of the game jam, I could not get her to understand how to properly operate Git.
Yeah, you
So
have time constraints, so you're like, there's a little bit of pressure on that teaching and learning.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And that sort of led me down a path which ended up with me finding diversion. So I would say that onboarding anyone with diversion is super, super simple and easy. So if you're looking into the future of maybe adding more team members, especially if you're team members that are not, or let's say less technical.
Yeah,
So
like an
not
artist
people
or
with
something.
engine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So working with Git, staying on Git would probably impact your workflow. So you would either have to teach them how to use Git, or you would have
Which I
something.
personally have a hard time even understanding.
Yeah, so that's door number one.
Yeah.
Another option that we see a lot when we talk to studios, especially a bit bigger studios, they have like a Git guy who just
Like this is
happens.
what's your purpose? Your purpose is to do commits.
Yes, no, no, it's even worse. It's not even to do commits. It's just usually one of the engineers or like the IT professional or one of the DevOps, whoever it is. And whenever the artists have some issue with Git, he needs to be called into the rescue. And if he's not there, then people are stuck. Yeah, so that's another option.
Have a
Or
Git
you,
guy.
yeah. Um, or you could have it impact your workflow, or let's say dictate your workflow, because you could arrive at a point that you say, okay, artists don't need Git because they're working on the source, a- like the source files
Sure.
in, well, I would imagine a sprite or Illustrator or whatever it is that we do for 2D, and yeah, they'll
Hmm.
just hand off the product, like the output file, and we'll just paste it into the repository. No biggie, and they'll just commit it. But then I think you lose something along the way, 'cause that would match more like traditional software teams where you have, okay, I have a website, I have like a SaaS website, and I have my product marketing team. And oh, we want this new banner for the website. Okay, so they give me
Yeah.
the banner, and I don't even have like the image itself in the repository, right? I have like a link to it. And
Yeah.
and the asset doesn't live as part of the project. And in gaming, that's just not the case. Even in smaller 2D games, assets live with you. They get modified and changed over time. So
Yeah.
limiting yourself in that way with Git, I think, would have negative effects. So you need something that people can work with.
Yeah. And you lose the history of the file, right? Like you maybe have the local history of you making the changes, but you lose as a team, you lose the history of that file to see where for example, if you want to go back to something that you previously had because 2 months later you're like, oh wait, we actually liked how it was. You don't have that if you're not having a source of truth or a backup system.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And that includes backing up the source art files.
Yeah.
Because why would the artist not be able to collaborate on a specific, I don't know, one goes on vacation. Okay, well, the source files is all there. I left it half done.
Yeah.
Finish it while I'm away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits. Well, especially if you're going to do anything 3D with larger files, then that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But it is true, and we have had teams that we talked to that didn't adopt diversion because they were super small, all like all very technical people doing 2D with Godot, which, as you said, is if you actually look at the source control documentation for Godot, they say, and I think it's great, that they aim to be as mergeable as possible. So everything like gets saved to text. So unlike
Hmm.
Unreal, for example, you have a lot of U assets. So there are definitely well, it's pros and cons for the price of adoption and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think well, I joined the team because I believe in the product. So I definitely think that's something you should look into. There
Yeah,
was this.
it's a cool way to have come to Diversion from simply being like I had a problem to solve and then this company solved it and you're like it's pretty cool. I like that. And then you were able to go work there, which is even cooler.
Yeah, I'm actually the first like real big user.
Ooh,
I was giving so many like feature requests and whatever, and I just said, okay, well, how about you pay me for my time? Like I'll just join the team. And I've been super happy. It's allowed me to continue my own game dev endeavors before.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. Um, yeah. So what else did I want to ask you? Talking about version control and like we said, backup and single source
Hmm.
of truth. Um, well, I know the answer to the next question, but I'll let you elaborate. Did everything go as planned?
No, things never go as planned. Um, things rarely go as planned. The the biggest lesson I've learned is that it's perfectly okay to throw stuff away. To take work and if you're hitting your head against the wall and you're like, this is just it's not clicking, it doesn't feel quite right, like just you can throw it away. It's fine. It's not like it's that sunk cost fallacy of like, well, if I've spent a week doing this, okay. But like, what if it doesn't actually make the game any better? Then it's like it's which is easy to say, and it's incredibly like I can look back and say, yeah, we had 12 different like special effects. You know, we had like the lightning and then radioactive that we removed and the golden asteroids and moons. Like, there's also a graveyard full of effects and old vestigial code in the project that is simply like stuff we were trying out in that moment that didn't really click with the core vibes that we wanted to do in the game. And we just threw some of that away and like maybe we'll resurrect some of it for some of these like alternative game modes and stuff. But yeah, it's easier said than done to throw away old work that you've done. But that's probably the biggest thing when you say like, did it go as planned? It didn't. And we even like move the deadline. That's the other big planning thing is like we planned to try to do a game. We were trying to release on like November 11th. We're sitting there on like October 30th, post Next Fest, had a really, really successful Next Fest, a lot of YouTube coverage of the game. We were like, we could crunch and grind and do late nights and try to get it out on the 11th. Wouldn't really do any play testing, or we could take another month, give it the time it needs, do play testing. And we did that choice, which ended up working out well for us. Um, but yeah, that was another big like planning thing that we changed mid cycle, and I think that was a good change in the long run. I'm somebody who really I don't want to crunch. I don't want to have these like late night sessions. I want to like be here for the long haul. And if I'm working 80 hours a week, I'm probably not going to be here for the long haul. And so yeah, a lot of little changes just to like listen to us as a process to see and be open to that agility of being able to pivot as we need to and really keep that in mind that we're two humans making games and we have our own needs. We're not just little robots that put out code.
Which is unfortunately not always the situation in the
Yeah.
industry with the
Yep.
very famous death marches
Yeah.
and dev hell and crunch time. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I it's nice
Even
to
extending
hear.
back to like corporations and those sort of teams, like we were always marching towards these deadlines and these big moments that like we made these up, didn't we? Like we picked these times. Can we change them? Like so it's something that now that I run my own company seems like such a big term for what I do. I run my own studio, we'll say studio, and I'm my only employee. I can manage myself the way I've always wanted to be managed, which is also a learning process to be like, how do I manage myself? How do I keep myself in the long run doing that? And I think some of those like aligning that methodology of long-term gains over short-term gains has been really helpful to not have that death march, to not have that crunch time. I crunched on Hexagod, I crunched on Chess Survivors, um, and I wonder if that growth of managing myself has helped make this game better because I was in a better place mentally while making it. Who knows? Who knows?
That's a really interesting question of how one affects the other. Talk about matching deadlines. Calling out Dave Farley once again. He
I'll have to
made
check him out. I'm gonna write him down. Dave
oh
Farley.
Dave Farley. Yeah, I found his channel following a video he made on Cyberpunk 2077
Okay.
on like why it failed the way that it did at launch, and one of the conclusions from that video is that you should not promise both deadline and scope. You should promise either and then match the other when it
Ooh,
changes.
yeah. That's what GGG's doing with Path of Exile and Path of Exile 2 is they're saying every 2 months we're gonna alternating Path of Exile 1 versus Path of Exile 2, and they're promising deadlines and they're saying we're gonna cut scope to hit the deadlines. So oh, that's interesting because that is, yeah, and it's been successful. They've hit now time and time again these deadlines that they're trying to hit, but that's come at the cost of scope. Ooh, scope and deadline. You can't do both. You can pick one or the other. Hmm. I like that a lot. All right, Dave. All right, Dave. I'll check that out. Dave Farley, cool.
Um,
If we say his name enough times, he'll come on the podcast, I think, right?
Yeah, maybe a whole, oh, I could be so lucky. So staying on the line of mistakes, um, there's my wife is a fiber artist as a hobby. She does a lot of like knitting
Oh,
and
cool.
sewing. Yeah. If this episode gets enough likes, I'll do the next one with my Star Wars sweater that she knit for me. What she did when she works on a project can take like weeks depending on what she makes, and
Yeah.
she could like make a mistake somewhere along the way. And she
Ooh.
developed this test where she comes up to me and just holds it in front of me and asks me, "Can you spot the mistake?" And if I can't spot the mistake, she doesn't go back and fix it. And
Yeah.
yeah, and my question to
Huh.
you is how do you manage these mistakes that probably like I'm sure that you look at your games and well I know about I'm very critical of myself to a fault.
Yes.
It's been detrimental to me personally. What do you see when you look at the games that you've released and how, but you did release them with everything
Yes.
that you see. So
Yes.
how did you manage that?
I see a lot of cracks. And there's this point, someone was talking about it in some YouTube video or some GDC talk or something, and it was like, there's a point that every developer gets to with their game that you're too close to it. You're so close to the project and you can't understand if the game is good anymore. And he was saying he's like I have to, and I wish I remembered who it was. He's like I had to trust my past self that what I was planning to do is good and just keep marching forward. I felt that all the time with the projects, and like part of that is we play tested it so much that we can't tell if it's good anymore because we're like just burnt out from play testing it. And so the solution is to watch other people play the game. Give it to other people and like watch them play it. Don't handhold them, see what they're doing, learn from their like their UI UX, what they're trying to click on and do, and then just like generally listen to how they're saying things. And that's been really helpful to just like, oh yeah, people are having a good time with this or having fun. To kind of answer that question, the same thing. Can you see the mistakes? And that thing that I think is a mistake, nobody noticed. Like they can't see it. All my games are full of cracks. All my games are full of mistakes. And the nice thing about a game is you can keep working on it. Like I've thought started I read a lot of books. Well, I don't read a lot of books. I read books sometimes. And I'm like blown away. They have to at some point say this is done and they send it to the publisher and then they print thousands of copies. And what if all of a sudden you realize on page 95, which maybe is a climactic point of the little arc you're on, there's a typo. You used the wrong there. And the flow of that reading, all of a sudden you read the wrong there, and 5% of your audience, that ruins that moment for them. You can't go and just hot fix and you change the wording, right? We get to do that, which is super. I love that. I can just say, okay, I'm going to fix it and we'll move on. But like games are never finished, they're just released. And the cracks are sometimes what makes them beautiful. And you can't really you can't fix them all. And that's also a hard thing to accept that the cracks have to be there. And like for a game about feeding a black hole, some of the cracks and bugs in that game literally have to be there because the rest of the game might be balanced off of that bug. Because we balance that tree and we want the tree to take a certain amount of time. And so there's certain things along the way where we're like, that's just part of the game now. Because if we change that, it changes all of this work. To go back to what we were talking about before of the building on top of it, we started building on top of some things that were actually not working as expected, but we kind of left them there because we had spent 50 hours balancing the tree around the fact that that bug existed.
You have some load bearing bugs in your games.
Yeah, it's that like, don't take this card out. You're like, there's a little comment. They're like, don't change this. You know, if you do, the rest of the the project breaks. It's one of those situations. Yeah, a load bearing bug. I like that term.
Yeah. And in all of these playtests, did players do something that surprised you?
Specifically with a game about feeding a black hole, no. The surprising thing was that some of the ideas and feelings that we wanted the players to have, they did. And it's like both of us kind of I had enough experience making games, Thornady had enough experience with incremental games that we had some core ideas of things we wanted to have happen. And you could see these moments where the player it click for them, they'd go aha, they'd have this reaction, and it was also like and we wanted you to feel that way, which was really cool to see that happen. The crazier thing is when people start speedrunning a game to see what they do and don't take on the upgrade tree because you don't actually I thought you had to take everything on the tree. That's kind of how it's designed is like you just slowly take all the different nodes. But then some like speed testers sent like screenshots of their final like tree and they take like 70% of the upgrades and they still beat the game because they figured out the ones that they don't need to take and can still win. So that's the most surprising part is when a speedrunner gets a hold of a game, they do some weird stuff and it's really cool.
Yeah, I always like looking at speed runs of games I finished
Yeah.
already.
Like
So
this took me 60 hours and you're like, you did it in an hour? What?
as if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, uh, right. Ooh, and okay, what I got one big final one. One last question,
Yeah.
the big one. So, well, especially with all of your content creation, like you said, YouTube, podcast occasionally, Twitch, and releasing something to the world that has like your name on it.
Hmm.
I assume that there's well, it's pretty vulnerable, I would imagine, and that there's a lot of self-discovery involved. So, what would be like the like hardest truth that you learned about yourself throughout all of your years of game dev and having your face and name out in the
Yeah.
world?
I think the hardest truth and the thing that I'm still working on is that that stuff does not make me good or bad or like validate who I am as a person. Like if my game comes out, like Hexagod came out, didn't sell as well as it did, or a video comes out and it's a 10 out of 10 on YouTube, which is not that's not good. 10 out of 10 is bad on YouTube. It's the opposite. Um, That doesn't mean that I suck, that I'm less than, that I'm not enough. That's the biggest thing that I've been working on in therapy, that I've been working on as a creative, well before therapy, is just like trying to disconnect myself from like negative reviews and even like positive reviews. It works both ways of like a game about being a black hole has over 100,000 players at this point, which is insane. Like I can't really picture like I like to picture it as far as like I'm in the United States, so we like our sports. So like NFL stadiums, the biggest NFL stadium is like 90,000 people. I can't quite wrap my head around the fact that that many people played my game.
My God, Americans will use anything other than the metric system. I mean,
Well, anything. We're like NFL stadiums. We use football field lengths and for one, I want to go to Celsius. It makes more sense. I want to go to metrics. It makes way more sense. And I want to get rid of like daylight savings because it doesn't make any sense. Um, but that's something I've learned, I think, is like divorcing myself from my work. It's like this is my work, this is my stuff. Like, and I make mistakes and I have successes, and those things are great and can be professionally validating, but that doesn't like validate who I am. Like I'm still regardless of what those things are, I'm still enough and I'm good and all those different kind of self-affirmations. So that's been the hardest lesson. And it is hard because I see reviews on a game of Feeding Black Hole and my knee-jerk reaction is I want to respond and tell them why they're wrong. But that's not my job and I'm not going to be able to change any minds. And it's okay that some people don't like the game. That's kind of how it is to make stuff. Some people aren't going to like it. And I think, in fact, if some people don't like it, you might be on the right path because if some people like it, like you can't make a game for everybody. Um, does that answer the question?
it
I feel like I walked in a little bit of circle there, but
no, no, I think it answered it beautifully, and it hits home. Let me tell you,
yeah, yeah.
I would imagine, and I hope that a lot of people listening would resonate with that as well.
Yeah. 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 It's hard. It's hard to make creative stuff because it's especially like contrasting it with like a job, like a corporate job. You're like, a lot of people don't care about their corporate job. And so you push to production, you have a bug, whatever. You fix the bug, you move on. There's like, it is easier to divorce yourself from this, like, oh, I'm working to get a paycheck here. Cool. But then all of a sudden, when it's your like creative project, it like creativity does feel inherently personal to me. And so then it's like, well, I'm making this thing that I love and that I find joy in and all these different things. And then you finally get the courage to give it out to the world, and someone in the world is like, nah, this is bad. And you're like, oh, I'm bad then, right? And like you maybe just are missing some skills along the way. And um that is a hard lesson to learn. And I feel like it's like a filter of creativity is like you have to be able to figure out how to get past that like personal connection to your own work. At least that for me, from my perspective, it feels like that was a major filter and something I'm still working on.
No, like I said, that makes, like I said, I think it makes perfect sense, and I hope people at home will hear it and will find that in their own journey as well.
Yeah.
All right, Aramis, well, I had a blast
Yeah.
at this first ever Diversion podcast episode. Hopefully, people will like
I'm
it and it won't
honored.
be the last.
Yeah. I'm honored.
Super happy to have
Yeah.
you on. Tell people where they can find you. Shamelessly plug everything you do.
Uh, Aarimous. You can just search Aarimous online, and there's I got 3 games on Steam you can check out. There's an Aarimous bundle. Aarimous.com, I guess, has some stuff on it. It's mostly pictures of my cats. Um, and then I have a YouTube channel called Aarimous, a Twitch channel called Aarimous. Um, yeah. So far, I haven't come across a situation where someone has stolen the name Aarimous, but maybe someday. So don't take my name. It's my username. I want it.
That would be pretty flattering if someone stole it, though, right?
It
It's
would
like,
be.
well,
As soon as I log into a game, if I'm like, I want to be Aarimous, because it's originally a WoW name, and so I'm like, it hasn't happened where someone's like the name's taken, but someday that maybe that's like a little milestone is like, oh, someone's copied my name. Cool, cool. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm very flattered to have been the first guest, hopefully of many, on the Diversion Podcast.
Fingers crossed, and everyone go check out A Game About Feeding a Black Hole out on Steam.
Yeah, and
Um,
subscribe down below and leave a comment about your favorite part and like it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And tell us who,
Ring
if
ring
you
that
have,
bell. What else would we say?
and if you have suggestions for anyone else who should be on the podcast, tell us
Like Dave
in.
Farley.
Oh yeah, oh Dave, if you're watching, yeah, anyone who you think should be on the podcast, let us know in the comments, and we will be seeing you next time.